I'm Juanita from Nearby Artisans, and I'm going to show you how to make some patterns. I make a lot of patterns. I make them for babies and weddings and some home decor. I make some for pets, and I really like making the patterns myself. The new machines will be coming out the end of this year, and it's going to be wonderful to have a 15 or even a 20-inch wide machine and mat. I'll then be able to make patterns that are larger. Right now I'm limited to patterns for infants, small pets, doll clothes, and some home decor things. But once the larger ones come out, I'll be able to make a lot of patterns for myself and my family, and even to sell. For instance, if you made some of these burp cloths, you could take some cardstock or some other kind of fancy nice paper. You could make an envelope or a folder. You could put these in there with some directions, and then you could sell these. And the only cost for you is the paper to print it on, and the paper to make the folders or the envelopes, and some ink. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to use Silhouette Studio for a business. And I cannot wait for those new machines. Now, I use Silhouette Studio, I use Microsoft Paint, I use Inkscape, and the order is Microsoft Paint is kind of just a holding place. If you don't have the business edition, you can't save to an SVG file that I know of. I will screen print, put them in Microsoft Paint, and then I can save them as a JPEG and use them. I also use Inkscape a lot. Inkscape is more complicated than Silhouette Studio, but it does a lot more things. However, as Silhouette has enhanced and upgraded their software, it has become a pretty close competitor, although there are so many things you can do with Inkscape. And I can have some videos about that later on. I have the business edition. The difference in the business edition that are for my needs were to save SVG files, and I can also use all of these different shapes right here, and each one of these shapes, like if I click on this, there's probably 5 shapes I can make from that one. So this just gives me a multitude of shapes and possibilities. This alone was worth upgrading to the business edition. But I'm just going to stick with the ones that are in the free software, the ones that are included with the standard Silhouette. I'm going to go ahead and make Burp Cloth 2-4. Now what my lettering is here is, if I make these and somebody wants to order one, or somebody wants to call me or text me and has a problem or a question, they can refer to my pattern piece, and then I can pull out the one and know what they're talking about. And this is the standard way that most patterns, they do have numbers. This is my initials. I could also have put an A for Nearby Artisans, but I try to not intertwine the two for right now. So I just have my initials. The 2 is because in my system, I have 1 for weddings, 2 is for babies, 3 is for pets, 4 is for home decor, and then I have 5 through 9. But once I get the bigger machine, I may have to increase that. So then it would have a point out here. But anyway, you can label them however you want, but this is just how I label mine. I went ahead and typed this in so that I didn't have to type this in while you're watching the screen. So I already have some burp cloths here. This burp cloth was made from a circle and a pentagon shape. This one was made from an oblong shape and a rectangle. And this one was made from, this was from one of the shapes in here that I manipulated for this bottom, and then just the rectangle top. This is another one that I've been working on just for an example. It was just a test, but now I'm going to make a new one. I want to make a burp cloth with a bottom that has a point to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and click up here, and if you're watching my videos, they're intermediate to advanced, so you probably already know most of these screens here. I am going to make some beginning videos because I was asked to, so I'm going to go ahead and go back and kind of create some beginning ones leading up to my intermediate and advanced videos. So I am going to go over to the view and I want to snap to grid, and you'll see why in a minute. Now again, I'm going to take this tool and I'm going to click on the, and I'm going to pull that up and see how that's snapping to some of those lines. And that's what I want. I want it to snap to the line. Now, if you don't have that snap to grid, these kind of want to wander a little bit. And if you know how you want this, that's fine. But I like it to snap to a grid so I get a nice straight line here. I want to change that to a solid line. And I'm going to show you real quick here, like, not that one, and I'm going to show you here how you can change this shape by having the number of sides. And that's the same way with these shapes. You change different aspects of them and get a completely different shape. And they're exciting. So I want the Pentagon. So I'm going to go back to 5. And this is the shape that I'm looking for right here. I want this one right here is round. This is kind of oval. This one here again has this like kind of a fanned out shape. I want this point right here for my shape. And I'm going to go ahead and convert this to path because I don't want it changing as I'm doing some of the things here to size it and to shape it. Now, I do have to consider that this is going to be printed, so it's not going to be 12 inches unless I decide to have my craft pens or markers do the drawing, which I can do, but I'm just going to go ahead and send this to my printer. So I'm going to know that I have to have this no wider than 8.5 inches. However, this is my sewing line. This is not my cutting line. My cutting line is going to be 1/2 inch past these lines, which is why I love using Silhouette software to make patterns, because then I can get my offset and I can say I want a 5/8 inch seam, 1/2 inch, a 1/4 inch, and I can get my seams however I want them, based on my offset. So this is going to have a 1/2 inch seam. Now, if you were going to serge this, or you knew somebody that was going to serge this, you could do a 1/4 inch seam, but I'm going to stick with a 1/2 inch. My printer is going to only print 8.5 inches wide, so I want this to be probably 7.5 inches wide. So I'm going to lock that in and say 7.5. Okay, now, what these sections here are for, specifically like right here, this is the shoulder section. This is the section that goes down over the chest and over the back for the baby to have its face on. This is the shoulder part. So I want to give myself a nice wide area in here, but I want this to taper up and then go up to my shoulder area, and I like a shoulder area to be about 4 inches wide. So I'm going to create a rectangle that's going to be 4 inches wide. I'm going to go up here and say 4 inches. Now, I want this to go across the shoulder, so it's probably 4 to 6 inches depending on the height of the person. If you have a tall person or a wide person, you might even want it wider than the 11 and the 8.5 by 11, but I'll show you how to do that. But so for now, we're just going to go ahead and say 4 inches. Now I want this, I want to take away the snap to grid because I want to have more control over this. So now I need to get the line from here to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this about Okay, if I have this right here, and I want this to be 4 inches, so that, like, so 2, say 2.5. So I want to have this 1, 2.5 inches above. I'm going to click on all that, and I'm going to align it in the center. Now I need these lines to go to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size of that so I can see it better. And I am going to get I'm going to go there and then right there. Because I want my large part, let me go out now to see, because I want my large part down here where the baby's face will be, and then it can taper up towards the shoulder, and then the 4 inches that's on the actual shoulder. Now, in looking at this, I think I might not want this that tall. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is what I'm trying to show you is how you can manipulate this to get it how you want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that down and pull this down, and then so I like that. Now this is going to give me about a 4 inch wide, but I'm not going to have the whole thing be 4 inches. This will give me some nice area in here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this down a little bit just to where it's overlapping. And now I'm going to weld that. Now I have these little extra things in here, and I'm going to go in and take those out because I don't want them. I want a nice smooth line there. So I'm going to get rid of any that are inside. And let me see this one. Looks like there's only one. Yeah, there's only one there. However, I want them to be lined up on the same line. So I'm just going to pull this up a little bit to make sure that it's straight across. Now I'm going to go out and look at that. And that's the shape I want. That's the style that I want. If I wanted this to be wider than the 8.5 inches, for now, I would go ahead and slice down the middle and print this out with just half of it, make it larger, and print it out with just half, and then tape it together. And if you look on the internet, you'll see a lot of people have done that, where they'll have a paper pattern, and you have to print out the different pages, and then you tape it together. But I'm going to go ahead and just leave it like this. And now I want to see, this does not include, this is my sewing line. This does not include the extra cutting line. So I want to see right now what I have as far as, I'm going to show my print border, and I'm going to take away my grid. And I can see now that my pattern is too large for my printer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pull this up and see how it looks, see if it still maintains somewhat of its shape. And I don't really like that, so I'm just going to make the whole thing smaller. And now I want to get my, so I know I need to have it within that area. I'm going to get my grid back. I'm going to get rid of my print border. And now I want to see what I have here. This here now is only, for making it smaller, this is only going to be a little over 1 inch. And if I have my it's not going to have a seam, it's just going to have a fold line right here. So the whole height is 9.67, so I'm going to have an 18-inch long baby burp pad. So I'm going to show you how you can take care of that. But first, I'm going to continue creating this part of the burp cloth. This is my title for it. Oh, first I'm going to get my my cut lines, and my sewing lines. So this is my sewing line, and usually within patterns, the sewing line is represented as a broken line. So I'm going to go ahead and give it this broken line. I want it to be black because I want to, when it prints, I want it to print really nice and dark. If I were going to use sketch pens to sketch this out on my mat, then I could use just any color. I could use one color for the print line. Actually, I could do that right now and have a color and say this is the cut line, but we have the broken line, and so that's fine. Plus, most printers, we have so much black ink, it's the color inks that we run out of, so I'm just going to leave this blank. I am going to make it a little thicker, and now if I was making these to sell so that they were consistent, I would go ahead and decide what I like, and then I would keep a little booklet that would have what are my thicknesses, what kind of lines do I use, what text am I using, and I would just keep that consistent. But now I have my stitching line. Now I'm going to go over and I am going to get an offset of that, and I want the offset to be 1/2 inch, so I'm going to say 0.5. And now I'm going to go ahead and say corners because I have this little point down here, but since this is the cutting line, it doesn't really matter. And now I want this line to be solid because that's what your cut line usually is, and it's black. I like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to group this because I don't want it, as I'm doing things, I don't want it to move around. Now I'm going to go ahead and give it its labels. So I'm going to make this really small, really small. Again, I'm printing this out, or I'm using sketch pens, so it doesn't really matter. I don't have to worry about how small it is or cutting it out. This is my reference for the Burp Cloth for this pattern, and then this is the name of it, like most patterns have. I'm going to go up and I am going to center that so it looks nice. I'm going to bring this down a little, kind of center this a little better. Maybe bring that one down some. I'm just going to center it again. And now I'm going to group all of that. So now, here's my pattern. It fits within my printer area, but I just might need to have a little bit longer shoulder section, because if I'm making this for a bigger person, you know, maybe a larger dad that has a wider shoulder, and he wants to use these, we don't want this width here coming up around the neck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that little section that, like I said, can be taped. And so I'm going to go ahead and let me see how wide this was. I'm going to go ahead and get a rectangle, and I'm going to line it right up with that. I'm going to go right over here and then right up. And I like to be able to look at them with a solid line. This keeps going back to the last line I had. And I want to see if this is going to be wide enough. I think it needs to be a little wider. Now, this is just the opposite of what this was. This is my cut line. The cut line doesn't matter as much. What matters, or except to make sure you have enough space for your seam, what matters is the stitching line. So I have my right amount. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to align those to just make sure what I have here. It overlaps a tiny bit, but that's okay. That could be taken care of with a rotary cutter or or scissors. I just want to I'd rather have it be slightly large than not large enough. So now I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to decide how long do I want this, how tall. Now you can make this for individuals. You can measure them or have them send you the measurements of what it is from like just under the shoulder bone to the other side to the back, and decide where is comfortable for them for it to flare out. And they could let you know that, or you can measure yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get myself an internal offset. Again, a 1/2 inch, so 0.5. And I want to give that the broken line. And I want it to be black. And I'm going to go ahead and make this one black too. And I want both of those lines to be white, a little thicker, so there. They might be thicker than the other one they might be thicker than the other one was, but like I said, get something consistent. Now, what I have here, I'm going to go ahead with this one, and I'm going to make it a little taller. And I'm going to, now did that change the inside? Like that doesn't look like it's only half of, I think I'm going to do that again because that didn't look quite right. So make sure this is lined up right. Yeah. Now I'm going to go ahead and do my internal offset again. 1/2 inch. And you can do 1/4 inch. I guess it was. It just didn't look right. You can do 1/4 inch if you think the person is going to serge it or whatever. I mean, you can decide. You could do 5/8 inch, but most people do a 1/2 inch now. And I'm going to do my broken line. And I'm going to group that. I just want to, now the cutting line, that's important. What's really important is my stitch line. Is my stitch line lining up right? And it is. And you will let your customers know, or whoever you decide to share this with, that the stitch line is what's important. Even if they have to alter it a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I would label this right here, if I have this extension, I would label this fold/overlap. And then I would put here on one side overlap and the other side the fold. Because what they're going to do is they're going to overlap this, or the stitch line. Actually, it doesn't really matter as long as they're getting the right amount. So they could put the stitch line right there. And then they have this much extra. And then what they would do is this overlap, they would tape this right here. This would say fold/overlap. And then now this now is their new stitch line along here. And that would probably match up pretty good without too much trouble. You can make sure that it lines up there. And so now what they would get is they would get 2 pieces, because and you would print these separately because this needs all of its room to print, and you don't have the room for this extra piece up here. And this is just the part that goes over the shoulder. So I think right here, if they didn't want it, if they wanted to, they could line up both dotted lines. If you thought they were going to have trouble understanding that, just say line up both dotted lines and tape. Or right there, this is the one that I would do, is right here and tape, and then just have my dotted line. And then for this too, then you just cut here. You just cut this out, this border out here, and it's pretty easy to follow. And then you could have instructions that you included with your, and now look how nice that looks. This would be a nice bib. You have your, where it flares out here past the neck, covers the chest area, gives the baby a nice clean surface here. You have your extension, and now you could sell these. I would put the same information here, at least this part right here. I would put that right here, and then maybe put EXT for an extension, and then your fold and your overlap here, and then this fold/overlap. And that's pretty clear. And they would stitch, you know, they would cut this out. Oh, another thing you could do is where you're going to leave an opening. If you're going to want them to just pull this inside out and then stitch the edge, I would just in here put a place where they're going to, this is on the fold, so it would need to be in here where they could turn it inside out, and then they could iron it flat, and then they could maybe top stitch it. But, and that's what I would do. And then if they have the section here, this extra section for it, then you could have this area, maybe in by the neck, where they stitched it, turned it inside out and stitched it by hand or did some top stitching. There's a lot of things you can do, but look at how easy that was with just a couple of shapes. And I did all these, and now I could go ahead and put these on my Facebook page. And I have another Facebook page also besides Nearby Artisans called Die Cutters and Crafters, and I'm going to try to put all the things I use for my videos on that page, and it is for the Cricut, the Silhouette, Inkscape, Silhouette Studio, Cricut Design Space. It's just going to kind of be all comprehensive for people that do have die cutters. Another thing that I do with the Silhouette software is I also do embroidery, and I had a design I was doing for someone, and I could not get in the embroidery software, I could not get the stitches to be close enough to the, it was a star, and there was a smaller star surrounded by a bigger star, and I could not get that to line up right, no matter how hard I tried in my embroidery software. So what I did is I came into Silhouette Studio, I created my star, I got my offset, I created the offset exactly 1/4 of an inch away. I saved that as a JPEG. I pulled it into my embroidery software, and those stitches lined up perfectly. So I'm going to show that on a different video later on about using the Silhouette Studio software for embroidery. And the Silhouette Studio software is also excellent for appliques. And like I said, I'm going to create once I get the larger Cameo, I'm going to create an American Beauty quilt, something I've always wanted. And I'm going to cut it out with the freezer paper. And another thing, you can cut these out on the plastic paper you get for stencils. It's usually in the sewing section or quilting section. And so you could cut these out there, and then instead of running it through a printer, you can get your Sharpies. You can get your markers to mark that, your sketch pens or whatever. So anyway, I hope you like this. Please go on to the Nearby Artisans website. I'm trying to create a website, and it's free, but where crafters, we're one of the biggest growing businesses in this country right now. Places are shutting down because they do a shirt and then there's 100 of them, and we do custom shirts. We'll do a shirt for a person where they get to have their name on it, especially if you have an odd name. You know, you get to have, not that it's odd, but, you know, a different name, a different spelling. We do so much, and I thought that it would be a nice idea to have a place where you could go on, and you, as a crafter, you could see the other crafters around you. You could see who they are. If you are a master crafter, a master at the Silhouette or at the other machines, you can list there that you are. Maybe you could put together some classes for those novice people. You know, a lot of them I read, they're willing to pay. Maybe you or a couple of you could get together and say, we're going to hold a master class. Sometimes if you do it at a hotel, you can get a free booking room and start teaching the people that are new. Or you can take your machines in and go in, if you're wanting more business from people, go in and do a show. Show them what you make. Show them how they work. Encourage them to get them too, and that you are their kind of their mentor. And you can also, that also lets people know, like your local hospitals, if somebody wants to go to the local hospital and that doesn't have a gift store and say, I will make custom balloons, and your florists, and they can kind of see who's out there, and they'll know that you're available and that you'll make things, and that you maybe will you deliver to your local hospital, will you deliver to your local florist if they order something from you. And this is a booming business. There's no reason that we shouldn't have our own directory. So please go on, take a look, and I hope you're interested, and thank you for watching.